Hi, my name is Alex Jameson. I am the creator of the Financial Aid Troubleshooter program that we're about to take a look at. This is for my senior capstone, uh, submitting this for the program requirement. So what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of take a look through here and take a look at the troubleshooter, and I'm going to explain what it's for. Um, my office tends to get a lot of general help calls from students. Um, Nowadays, students don't really take a look into their aid as often as they should. They'd rather call and get information about it. The idea behind this program is that it may cut down on those calls, allow students to have more access and information that answer some of their general questions. Specific questions are still going to be directed to the office, but that's more of what we want. Too many general questions tends to slow down our processes. It puts us behind on certain things. So this program is designed to try to cut down on that as much as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a couple aspects of the program and just show you a couple different things in here and give you an idea of how it'll work. So you'll notice it has an entry here. Thank you for using the Financial Aid Troubleshooter. Please press the button below to begin. You just go ahead and click begin, and it is going to get you right into it. Now, not anything against our students, but they do tend to have pretty short attention spans in some regards. So you'll notice I've narrowed down the options to as few as possible. I've got 4 main options for this program that students typically have questions about. Initially, we want to go a little more specific, but found that there weren't as many questions of that category after kind of tallying how many questions we got on a daily basis. So there were a couple categories cut initially, and it cut down on the amount of traffic on this first page overall so that we could get more to the nitty-gritty of the general questions we wanted answered. But more than that, we do have, this page has a descriptions page that kind of gives us an idea of the different options that we have here and what they are for in case the student has very, very basic knowledge on the subjects. So if you give it a click, it's going to open up a second page for us, and it's going to give us just a brief outline of the different things that we see here. So it tells us about the verification process, what that section entails, the FAFSA, the scholarship section, and the student loan section. And the student at any time can just close that. Notice it opens as a separate window. This doesn't lead anywhere apart from the descriptions. The student can just close that, and they can go back here at any time. You'll notice throughout the presentation that there will be a cancel button. This is just easier option for the student to close out of the program entirely. But what we really want to see is the different areas. So we'll take a look at some of the shorter areas first, and then go to the bigger areas. The FAFSA and verification are 2 of the biggest areas where we see the most questions, so they do go a little more in depth. But let's start with student loans here, and it shows us the different options available in the student loans category. You'll notice there are additional buttons at the bottom now. We can go previous, so we can always go to the previous page. Upon clicking that, it'll take you immediately to the previous page you were on, so that they can navigate back at any time in the process if they want to return, if they click an option wrong, or if they just want to change their mind about something. They can just click that, and there is also a return to start on most pages. Previous and return to start in this case are going to take you to the same place, but at other parts of the application is going to take you a little farther back all the way to the beginning if you just want to start over or have more questions about other things. So the sections here are pop-up pages, since that's all we really want to see on the loans page. We don't want to give them too much information on loans because we try to steer students away from that direction. So this is just really base information on how to start the process and the kind of requirements you'll see. So when you click these, it is going to pop up general information on what you've selected, give you a kind of a brief rundown over some of the more common aspects of these questions that we see. And then when the student is done, they can just click this little button down here, this close button. Of course, they could click the X in the top. It's going to take them right back to this page, and they can do that with any of these processes here. So these are a little more surface level here, but let's go back to the start. and we'll take a look at a little more of an in-depth one here. We'll look at the verification. So the verification also has 4 different categories. You'll notice it also has its own pop-up pages, just giving the student general information on those. But it does go a little more in depth than the loan, especially in the verification form section. We see a lot of questions about our verification forms. That was one of the more highly questioned aspects of the financial processes. So we go a little more in depth here. So you'll notice here I have a couple different sections. I've got each of the different forms, or if they are not aware yet, I do have a section on what form they may need. So when you go here, it's going to give you a pop-up of if you don't know what form you need, here's a brief description of each of the forms, where you can go to find out more about the forms, and generally find out what you need to do. But the forms themselves are much more in-depth because we have a lot of questions about the forms. We try to make the forms as detailed as possible, and I'm going to show you a little bit of that. But these are going to go really in-depth on what the form looks like and what you're supposed to do. So when you click this, boom, it is going to pop up this picture right here. These stylized pictures that I made from our website, and I have put in great detail the sections that the student wants to pay particular attention to. And then over here I have included text boxes that show each individual section, what it is for, lays it out for the student in perfect order so they can have a better idea of what they need to do at those sections. At the bottom you'll notice there's a button that says "This answered my question." That's just so the student can finish out the application. It'll tell them additional information about contacting our office. We don't want to use that right now because it is going to close out the application. I have to reopen it. But that is what they would click if this successfully answered the question. Otherwise, of course, they can click previous down here. Say they misclicked the wrong form. Maybe that wasn't the form they intended to use. They can just click previous and then go back to either of the other forms. For instance, V5, which is a combination of these two, it's going to be easier to look at than just V4. If we look in here, we will see a slightly bigger page. This one was pretty big, so I had to kind of stagger this one. It has a couple different options you'll see down here, and so I had to implement a scroll bar. So I've got a scroll viewer over here that allows us to go all the way to the bottom and see the information. But that's just a general look there. If you can enlarge it, obviously. But it gives a walk down, same thing. Answered my question, previous. But that's essentially the whole application there. It just walks through various sections. You can go back to any point in time and choose your options. It can get pretty in-depth. The FAFSA section actually goes pretty in-depth as well. But the intent, of course, is to have the student have a little more independence and possibly take a little more responsibility for finding out the information themselves. If you can cut down on any amount of calls to our office, that's certainly going to improve our processes. So now that we've had a look at the application itself, we can take a look at a little bit of behind the scenes. I've got it open down here in Visual Studio. So looking at some of our information, like we'll look at the V5, and it's going to show us my general layout here that I was working on at the time. I'll zoom into 50% so you can see it a little better. But this is where I was working and just using the different items. I hand typed a lot of the sizes for these, especially because the photos were incredibly hard to work with. Added them in through the assets option that was already on here, and then included the scroll viewer and everything. So this is what each of them is kind of going to look like. And you notice there's a lot of pages. Obviously, there's a lot of different information to go through. So there's a lot of typing out. Fortunately, some of the code could be copy and pasted once I had it down in the application. But overall, pretty extensive program here. It can be improved upon. I was hoping to get a little bit farther. Like I said, there were other categories I really wanted to take a look into, but given the time constraints on the project and how many questions were realistically answered about those, I decided to cut them from the project. But it is something that could definitely be added on in the future. There's room to add on to it and go forward from there. And of course, it could be stylized however you want. I was going to add our three rivers colors, but it was a little bit dark since it is black and gold, and it kind of took away from the general look of it. It wasn't as clean looking, in my opinion, so I did keep it with just a traditional gray and white. But that is the financial aid troubleshooter. So I'm happy to see what you guys think. Looking forward to seeing some of the comments in the discussion board. Thank you very much, and y'all have a Merry Christmas.